Okay, 5.3, you guys, we're going to see something a little bit different here. The title of the section here is Write Linear Equations in Point Slope Form. It's just going to be another way that we can graph linear equations. Our go-to again, though, and we've said it over and over again, it's also stressed here in the notes once again, but it says slope-intercept form. It says previously we have dealt with the equations of lines in slope-intercept form that look like y equals mx plus b. And like I've told you guys over and over again, we need to know slope-intercept form. Okay, now we're going to look at point-slope form that looks like this. So point-slope form is a little bit different, but there's some similar parts to it. We have y minus the quantity y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Okay, and when we look at this, really what this comes from, and this isn't to confuse you guys, but really this is just a different variation of slope formula. So slope formula, once again, looks like this. Okay, so slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so now if we look at this algebraically and we say that we want to isolate the y's that are on top, what we would do is we would take this whole quantity on bottom and we would multiply it to both sides. So I'm going to multiply x2 minus x1 to both sides. Okay, and then notice that once I do that, those cancel out, and essentially what you have is this slope formula. This slope formula now just looks like point slope form, but it's flipped around. Okay, so slope formula is just another variation of point slope form when we go to look at this today. But again, here's what it needs to look like every single time. So in sections 5.1 and 5.2, when it said write the equation in slope-intercept form, all of our answers look like this right here. Okay. Now that we're moving on to the next section in point-slope form, the answers are going to look a little bit different, but after you guys do one or two of them, you'll see that this is just as easy. Okay, so for this first one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by writing down the formula again down here in this section. I'm going to write y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Okay, now what we do here is we take the given values that we have and we plug them in. So first I need my y1. The only y that I'm given is right here. It's -3. So when I go to plug this in, it's going to be y minus, and then I plug in -3. Okay, and then I write equals m is given here as 2 times the quantity x minus my x that's given is 4. Okay, notice here how I kind of color coded this stuff. When we do this, we have to look for our x and our y and our m. So I found my y right here was -3. I found my m right here was 2, and I found my x, which was 4. When I plug in the y, what we have to look at is the fact that we have a double negative here. So I ended up plugging in a -3, but really my final answer is going to be the opposite of that. It's going to be y plus 3 equals 2 times the quantity x minus 4. So the one thing that we need to watch for in point slope form is that whenever we plug it into the formula, it's going to be the opposite. So I plugged in a -3. Notice that in the formula for point slope, it's the opposite. I plugged in a +4. In point slope, it's the opposite. Your slope stays the same always. Okay, so try B and C. Again, like I said, I'm going to go through them a little bit quicker, but you guys should be just fine going through these. Okay, so when you try this one, we simply plug in the numbers. Y minus 4 equals -2 times the quantity x plus 1. And again, remember it's plus 1 because this was a negative, so it's the opposite of what I think when I plug it in. And again, guys, don't look to distribute or do anything else here because this is what our answers need to look like. We talked about this up above, that in point slope form, the answers need to look like this. So when I get my answer in point slope form, I'm done. Now going back down and finishing up this example here, letter C, we just plug in. Y minus 1 is the given value equals my slope is 3, x plus 3. And that is it for that first section. So in our homework, it should be just that easy. Okay, if they give you a point and a slope and say to plug it into point slope form, should be super easy for us to get pretty quickly. Okay, this next section we have to kind of think a little bit backwards here. What we have to remember is that once we have it in point slope form, the information that I want to take away from this is a point, an x and a y, and a slope m. So looking at this right here, I can see that my slope is equal to 2/3. Now what I need to do is I need to figure out what my x coordinate is and my y coordinate. My x coordinate here, it says x minus 3, so my x coordinate is going to be 3. Remember on the previous page of notes, when we plugged in a positive number into point slope form, it was actually the opposite. So that means that this right here that says y plus 2 is going to give me a -2. So now that I have a coordinate point, 3, -2, I plot it. So I go right 3 and down 2, and I plot my point. So there's 3, -2, and then I plot my next point using my slope. So I use my slope for the next point, so I go up 2 and over 3 and plot a point. Again, you can go up 2 and over 3 again, or you can go down 2 and left 3. Slope works the same way every time, and then we graph our line. Okay, go ahead and pause. Try the next example on your own. I believe there's a letter C here also. Yes, okay, so try the next example, see how you do. Okay, this one, we take our coordinate point away. We have 2, 1. And then looking at this, my slope is going to be -1. Okay, so 2, 1, I go right 2, up 1. And then my slope is -1, so I go down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. I can continue plotting points. And we just graph our line. Okay, so there's that line. Next, letter C. Hopefully you guys tried this already. Same thing here. I take away my point, -2, 2. I go left 2 and up 2. Plot my point. I use my slope, m equals 1 over 2. So I go up 1 over 2. I can go up 1 over 2 again. Okay, and there's the slope. So that's it. Point slope form, pretty easy to graph with. This time the only difference is we're not plotting our y-intercept first. We can plot wherever the point gives us. Next example here, this is pretty simple. Using pictures, we can just count this out. So if I count this out, looking at this, first thing we always look to find in any problem is our slope, especially in something like point slope form. Now, my slope here, if I count this, that's down 2, so I need to write a -2 over +2. If I evaluate that, -2 over +2 is equal to -1. Now the tricky part some of my students sometimes overthink is which point do we use. Either one is perfectly correct, so there's actually two answers here. Once I have my slope, again, my slope is -1, but I can use either point. So in green, I'm going to write -1, 3. In blue, I'm going to write 1, 1, and they're both 100% correct. I can go y minus 1 equals -1 times the quantity x minus 1, or I can say y minus 3 equals -1 times the quantity x plus 1. Again, both of those answers will be acceptable on a test. Once you find your slope, you can plug in either point. Okay, go ahead and try the second example. Should be just as easy. moving on here, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit so I can count this a little better for you. Looking at this, I look at my slope and I'm going down 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then I'm going right 1, 2, and 3. So I have negative 6 over 3, which is going to give me negative 2 for my slope. Once again, it does not matter which point I pick. So your answers could have been y minus 3 equals negative 2 times the quantity x plus 2. Or your other answer could have been y plus 3 equals negative 2 times the quantity x minus 1. And done. Okay, so again, before I scroll down real quick, when you guys go to answer these questions, just remember that really anytime you're given 2 points and you have to write an equation in point-slope form, that you could have multiple answers. Scrolling down here, you guys should not have any trouble figuring this out. Anytime you're given 2 points, odds are you're going to have to find your slope. So use slope formula. I'm going to start on letter A. You can finish this if you'd like and do it just like we did this one up here. Once we find our slope, either point will give us our answer. Okay, so finding our slope, we're going to do 4 minus 3 over 4 minus 2. I get 1 over 2 is my slope. Now I can write the answer. Y minus 3 equals 1/2 times the quantity x minus 2. Or I could write y minus 4 equals 1/2 times the quantity x minus 4. Both of those answers are correct. You only have to give me one in your homework and it will be right. Just so long as you don't pick a point from 2 different points, meaning I'm telling you don't do y minus 4 and then do x minus 2 in the same equation. Okay, just make sure you pick from the same point. Last one here, I'm going to go ahead and find the slope. Go ahead and pause this if you want to try it on your own. But I'm going to do 4 minus 1 and then 1 minus negative 2. Watch your signs. So I end up getting 3 over 3 and my slope will be 1. Okay, now that I have my slope, I just go y minus 1 equals 1 times the quantity x plus 2. Okay, other answer, y minus 4 equals 1 times the quantity x plus 1. Minus 1, sorry. Whew, gotta watch those signs. They're backwards from what you think. Alright, and that is going to wrap it up for this lesson. Again, guys, make sure that if you didn't pay attention very good in a section, the nice thing about this being a video is that you can rewind it and look it over again. So make sure you go back to it if you need extra help on it.